In ancient times, early writing systems emerged across the world as tools to record language, preserve power, honor gods, or manage trade. Some of these scripts are well understood today: Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mesopotamian cuneiform, and the early alphabets of the Levant. But one writing system, found in Europe, remains an enigma, a series of mysterious symbols left behind by a once thriving civilization, still defying all efforts to decode them. This is the story of Linear A, Europe's last undeciphered script, and one of the most enduring linguistic puzzles of the ancient world. More than 4,000 years ago, the Minoan civilization flourished on the island of Crete. They built elaborate palaces, maintained far-reaching trade networks with Egypt and the Near East, and produced exquisite artwork and religious artifacts. Yet, for all their sophistication, we know remarkably little about the Minoans' language, and that is largely because the script they used, Linear A, has never been fully deciphered. It first came to light in the early 20th century, unearthed in the ruins of palatial sites like Knossos and Phaistos. On clay tablets, ceilings, and pottery, scholars discovered rows of neatly inscribed symbols arranged in horizontal lines. The characters appeared systematic, structured, clearly a formal writing system. The British archaeologist Arthur Evans named it Linear A to distinguish it from another script later found in the same region, Linear B. Evans believed the two were related, and he was right, partially. Linear B was eventually deciphered in the 1950s and turned out to represent an early form of Greek used by the Mycenaean civilization that succeeded the Minoans. But that's where the similarities end, because while Linear B borrowed heavily from Linear A in terms of structure and symbols, applying the same phonetic values to Linear A produces nonsense. The words formed do not resemble Greek or any known language. That tells us something critical. The language behind Linear A is unknown. It isn't Indo-European. It isn't Semitic. It isn't related to any documented linguistic family. And that makes the decipherment process incredibly difficult. It's as if we possess an alphabet, but no dictionary. Despite this, researchers haven't given up. Over the decades, around 1,500 examples of Linear A have been discovered, scattered across Crete and a few Aegean islands. Most of them are very short, often no more than a few words. There are no long inscriptions, no detailed explanations. Some seem to be inventories or accounting records. Others appear ceremonial, etched into ritual vessels or altars. But without a bilingual reference, a kind of Minoan Rosetta Stone, much of the interpretation remains speculative. Various scholars have proposed connections between Linear A and other ancient languages. Some suggest a link to Luwian from Anatolia or to early Semitic tongues. Others argue that it represents a completely isolated linguistic family, one that vanished when the Minoans declined, a language with no relatives, no descendants, and no surviving examples beyond these fragments in clay. What complicates the matter further is the utilitarian nature of most texts. Many Linear A inscriptions are administrative, perhaps listing goods, names, or numbers, useful for managing resources, but not very helpful for understanding grammar or vocabulary. Without longer context-rich texts, linguists are left with little to go on. And yet, there are patterns. Certain phrases or symbol sequences appear repeatedly across different tablets, as if they were formulaic or standard expressions. Some characters frequently appear near specific numbers, or in set groupings. This suggests internal consistency, a kind of logic behind the script, maybe a bookkeeping code, maybe religious formulas. Whatever the case, there is an underlying system that we just haven't cracked. The symbols themselves are intriguing. Most are abstract or stylized, with a few that resemble plants, tools, or body parts. There are about 90 primary signs in Linear A, some of which look like those in Linear B, though their sounds and meanings are uncertain. Because we don't know what phonetic values to assign, we can't sound out the words. And without understanding what the words mean, we're essentially reading gibberish. Every interpretation remains hypothetical, unprovable, without further evidence. One of the most fascinating aspects of Linear A is how ancient it is. It was used from roughly 1,800th to 1,450th BCE, over 3,500 years ago. In its time, Crete was a naval power, deeply connected to the broader Eastern Mediterranean world. The Minoans were advanced in architecture, water management, and global trade. Yet their prayers, laws, myths, their very voice is lost to us, encoded in symbols that remain silent. Some scholars have suggested alternative theories. Perhaps Linear A isn't a phonetic script at all. Maybe it's ideographic, representing concepts, not sounds. Others propose that it was a ceremonial code, not meant for general communication, but for a religious elite. Some argue we may be approaching the script from the wrong angle entirely, misunderstanding its structure or purpose. Could we be looking for a language when we should be seeking something else? There are those who claim to have partially deciphered Linear A, proposing meanings for specific symbols like wine, grain, or offering. But without confirmation, these remain educated guesses, hypotheses without proof. And, as with many ancient puzzles, fringe theories also emerge, suggesting extraterrestrial influence, lost continents, or secret societies. But for mainstream scholars, the mystery of Linear A remains rooted in history and linguistics. What we do know is that Linear A disappeared abruptly. Around 1,450th BCE, the script vanishes from the archaeological record. At the same time, Linear B appears, along with signs of Mycenaean presence on Crete. The Minoan palaces were destroyed, perhaps by earthquakes or invasion. Their society crumbled, and with it, their language faded. The Mycenaeans spoke Greek and used their adapted version of the script for their own administration. But the original Minoan language, hidden within Linear A, was never passed on. It was forgotten. And so today we are left with an enduring riddle, a script that we can see, that we can touch in museums, that we have catalogued and classified, and yet cannot read. It sits frozen in time, etched into clay tablets, as mute as the ruins where it was found. There is something deeply haunting about that, to see the shape of a word without hearing its sound, to hold a tablet knowing that someone once wrote it with meaning, urgency, perhaps even reverence, and to have no idea what they were saying. Still, there is hope. New excavations in Crete and the surrounding islands continue to reveal clues. Perhaps one day, a bilingual text will surface, a Minoan inscription next to a familiar language, or maybe a longer passage that provides enough context to unlock a few words, then a few more. The field of linguistics is always evolving. Patterns are seen where once there was only noise, and one breakthrough can change everything. Until that day, Linear A remains a symbol of how much we still don't know, a reminder that even in Europe, where history often feels so thoroughly documented, there are still forgotten languages buried beneath centuries of soil and stone, whispers from a world that once was, a voice that once spoke, once sang, once prayed, and now waits in silence. But maybe not forever. If you're fascinated by ancient mysteries like this, consider subscribing to the channel. There are countless more stories waiting to be uncovered. Lost scripts, vanished civilizations, and unexplained technologies. Which mystery do you want us to explore next? Let us know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the silence of history says more than 1,000 words.